warm welcome to this video on the soul trap. This is a part 2 to the original video, Soul Trap Escape, Life is a Jailbreak. I said I was going to make a video when I came back from hosting the Silent Self-Realization Retreat in the Netherlands, and that's what this video is. So I welcome you to this talk. Hopefully we can extrapolate, expand upon this concept of the soul trap, the dynamics of it, and also, of course, the solution. Because there is a solution. So, this video has gone viral. There's been a lot of interest in the first video, Soul Trap Escape, Life is a Jailbreak. And because so many people have resonated with it, this is why I have done a part 2. And I think people resonate because there is something within them, all of their life, that they have known that something was not quite right with the world. Maybe they even felt that there was something not quite right with themselves or their body in some way. I've talked before about how the body seems to work against a being in many ways. Of course, there are many things that can be done to mitigate that so that the body begins to work for you. But in many ways, it seems like the body is working against, because we can see that is the case just through, in terms of age, in terms of time, right? The body is essentially decaying, has a limit to it, a time clock on it. But if we go back far enough into history, there were accounts and tales of beings living much longer. So it is almost like a restrictor has been put on the human genome. You know, it's like a car, right? You get these cars that certain companies use, and a restrictor will be put on the car so that it can only do 70 miles an hour, even though it might be able to do 120 miles an hour. And even when it comes to the internet, we know, like in certain places, it's happening right now in the Western world as well, the censorship, the firewalling off of certain parts of the internet. This is a way of restricting the possibilities. And in the same way, it seems that the DNA has somehow been restricted. Now, whether or not that has been done, you could say manually, on purpose, or whether it is because of some change in consciousness, or a combination of the two, then, you know, that remains to be seen. But what we can certainly say is that with the awakening of consciousness through self-realization, it is possible to open up the capabilities, the capacities of the body and mind, of the DNA, and also of the brain. Many people have experienced, including myself, that when the self-realization took place, there was a shift on the physical and the mental level. And through the field and study of epigenetics and neuroplasticity, we know that the brain and the body is malleable. It's changeable, moldable. We know that certain genes switch on and off based on certain experiences. If you learn a new skill, new genes are used. If you learn a new skill, also the brain rewires itself. So the brain and the body can change itself. For a long time, it was thought that these were completely fixed based on what was passed on from previous generations. So actually, it can all change. And with the introduction of more consciousness, which is to say your true nature, that ability for the true nature to be embodied into what you are, then the capabilities of the body and mind can open up. The possibilities are more expansive. And there's been beings throughout the ages that have shown that this is possible. The saints, the mystics, the sages, they have shown that it is possible to activate, to switch on these dormant powers, true powers of the human being, true spiritual powers, mental powers, what they call in the East the cities, these mind powers. So if we now look at this drawing here, this rudimentary drawing, we can see that there are circles, and these circles are representing the different frequency levels. I call them frequency bubbles. There is the source, that which was before the universe, that which the universe came out of. We can say that the source is aware of itself, conscious of itself. But in order to have different experiences, to experience itself in different ways, it has to create forms, many different forms. And this enables it a richness of different experiences. So out of the formless source came all forms. And these forms were in great multiplicity, many different varied forms, and those forms are constantly changing into other forms. This is evolution. As evolution continues, there is an expanding of certain forms, new forms created. So life is this kind of always expanding process, which enables many different experiences for the source to experience. And it would seem that the source enjoys this. It's playful. You know, if we say, why does somebody want to play a video game? Primarily it is because they want to be entertained. They want to have fun. They want to enjoy. They want to play. When we were children, we all wanted to have fun, enjoy, and play. It's only when the mind comes in, the conditioned mind, that it starts to think in terms of winning and losing, and then things become very serious. Then it gets attached, identified with what is happening. Then there is fear. Then there is unhappiness. You see? But originally, there was just playfulness, enjoyment. So just like somebody would create a video game to have lots of experiences, to simply play, in the same way the universe was created out of the formless source, for the source to enjoy the play. So what changed? Well, even in the original universe, which is represented by this outer circle, even in the original universe, it is possible for a being to lose themselves in the world of form. Think about it, right? If you go into a virtual reality world, we're soon creating that. We're soon creating something that's going to be almost like life itself. The graphics are going to be so good. If you could plug and hook up all of your senses to the video game, you would start to not be able to differentiate between what you really are and the game itself, between reality and the illusion of the game itself. They would start to become almost indistinguishable. And if a being was not fully present and grounded and self-aware of what they are, they could easily start to lose themselves, get identified with the forms, with a certain body, with a certain personality, with certain possessions, achievements, relationships, right? All of these things could start to pull and suck you in to where you can't differentiate anymore between what you really are and what is actually an illusion, what is false. So even in the original universe, it is possible for a being to lose themselves in that universe. But then you have another level, you have the non-human level. There are interdimensional beings, extraterrestrial beings. You know, we only have to look to the human body itself. If somebody was to say hundreds of years ago, certainly thousands of years ago, that your body is infested with creepy crawly alien-like species, right? When you look at some of these things, these bacteria or parasites under a microscope, they're like almost like an alien species. If somebody was to say that is going on inside of your body, that there is billions of these organisms inside of the body, a lot of people wouldn't believe it. But now we know. So life can exist nearly anywhere. And if there are microscopic parasites, microscopic good and bad bacteria, then as below, so above. As above, so below. As within, so without. So there are also parasitical beings, also what you would call good beings and bad beings at all different levels of life. And these are outside of the range of visible light. We know that the human being only sees a tiny portion, what is called the visible light spectrum, of what is actually occupying this space right now. Right now where you are, what is being occupied has many, 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 many levels to it. We can think that really what we call the universe is like a paintbrush stroke from thick to thin. If you get your paintbrush and you begin to paint a stroke on the wall, it would start off thick, and if you kept walking along, it'd get thinner and thinner and more subtle and more subtle. These are what you would call like the dimensions. These are the different levels and frequencies of life, from dense to subtle. What you essentially are is beyond all frequencies, beyond all layers. Because any frequency, any layer is something that can come and go. It's something that is moving. But what you really are is completely still, completely free from that. So you can see that through that, there are many different levels that there are beings potentially existing within that are outside of visible light that cannot be seen. Just because we cannot see it with the visible eye does not mean it is not there. Some beings have the capability to see outside of the visible light spectrum. I would suggest as a being becomes more and more conscious and their body and mind capacity opens up, that they will be able to see more things outside of that visible light spectrum. So in this non-human level, there are gatekeepers of that level, of that frequency level, of that frequency bubble. I made a video talking about the ring pass knot, this concept of the ring pass knot that has been spoken about, and how beings must break through that level to find freedom. And so really all of these levels, one has to break through, and the deeper you go into those levels, like a dream within a dream, a bubble within a bubble, into a lower and lower and lower and denser frequency, the more tricky it is to find your way back to the source. The truth is that what you are as a source is always there. It is present in all of these levels. It is present in all experiences, in all frequencies. It is the very one at the source of your experience that is conscious, that is aware. You can vacate to that level at any moment. You are already vacated. You step out of the mind, and it is there. You are already there. That is the true vacation. That is the true freedom. You don't actually have to go anywhere. That's all space-time illusion created by the mind. You don't have to go anywhere. It is right here, because everything is right here, right now, and nothing is right here and right now. You see? All that is needed is to notice it, to be aware of it, and to give attention to it, to make that the priority, and to not get identified with what is going on. So that's available at any moment in all of these levels. But you have this non-human level where energy is being harvested, right? We know life feeds on life, does it not? Life feeds on life. So what makes people think it is any different at different levels? At all these levels, to some degree, life is feeding on life. And so naturally there will be beings built into the system feeding on each other. There'll be beings that want power for themselves. And so they try to rule over a certain frequency where they act like a gatekeeper or a controller. I call these the frequency controllers. I talked about the frequency holders, those beings generally that are holding a higher frequency to invite others into that. But also you could say there are frequency controllers. If you go into a prison, there will be certain members in that prison that basically run the prison, certain inmates that run the prison. If you go into any area, there is usually somebody that is kind of running or dominating that area. And then everybody else is kind of subservient to those that are dominating. This is like the animal kingdom, the food chain. So this goes on at all levels, levels that we can't see. Again, as above, so below. As below, so above. This is how you can come to see this for yourself. Many people have said, what you are saying is just a theory. But when you understand the way life works, when you know yourself, you know life, you know the universe, because the universe is within, microcosm of the macrocosm. Know thyself, you will know the universe, because you will see the dynamics at play at all levels. So you'll be able to see that to some degree this is happening. And ultimately a being must come to realize that for themselves. Otherwise, all that I am saying is something that you either believe or disbelieve, which doesn't necessarily get you any closer to it. Doesn't get you any closer to the truth. But when you know yourself and you know the levels of your being, you start to know and see the way that things really work. So at all these levels, there is a food chain. There is a kind of hierarchy, a structure. Many of the secret societies, the darker ones, they try to appease and align with these more negative beings at certain levels. Right? Many people know this. And they do this for control and power. Unfortunately, they have become lost. They've lost themselves. They're losing themselves. These are what I call the distorted beings. They are distorted beings. They forgot who they really are. And so they think they've got to feed off of life. And this is something that has been forgotten by these beings. They've forgotten their source nature, which is self-sufficient. When you tap into who you really are, when you tap into the natural way of life, you don't need to steal energy from other things, or it can be reduced to a minimum. You become more self-sufficient. You don't have to harvest energy from somebody else. But these beings, these distorted beings, have strayed for so long away from the source, lost in the world of forms, identified in the world of forms, looking for power and control, that they are lacking that energy. And so then they look to take the energy from somebody else. You see, and we can see this at play. An example of this is like the banking system. All of the terminology, banks, like banks of a river. Banks control the flow of the river. Banks control the flow of currency, which is a form of energy. By controlling that flow, they benefit in some way. They benefit greatly. And they also control the beings that use their currency and that have money in their banks. And the whole system has been created around the banking system, around this form of currency, this form of exchange, which is only one form of exchange, by the way. It's only one form of energy, right? There are many ways to exchange, but it has been made more difficult. It's been created so that you kind of have to play that game to some degree. Now, of course, the more that you are locked into that system, you have debts, you have loans, you have all of your money and savings in the bank, the more that you are subservient to them. But the less you use it, the more that you've found other ways around it, the less you are subservient to them. You have more freedom from their influence, from their control. And so there's many levels to this, right? You can look at it in terms of what is going on in the food industry, money. You can look at it in terms of environment. And of course, we know that there are certain beings that would like to create a one world system that is centralized, in which they can dictate and control from a centralized source, maybe behind using artificial intelligence, maybe. This is where beings have to be wise. These are certain levels, you see, of the soul trap. These are levels. There's all of these traps in what we call life. There's all of these traps. Even the word life itself, lie-fee. Lie-fee. Like a lie and a fee. It's pointing to something. What we call life generally, which is the world of forms and these different systems, these different matrix systems, they are a kind of lie. They are an illusion. And also they come with a fee. The fee is your energy. That you've got to give some energy. In the world of form, you have to give some energy. Your work, if you want to be free, is to give as little energy to these different systems and find ways to reserve your energy, to stay self-sufficient in that energy, and ultimately to find freedom from this life, from the world of form, to realize your formless nature, so that when the form passes away, you will be able to return back to the source of what you are. Self-realization is to realize the source of what you are right now. To not wait until death of the body comes. Because at that point, it could be too late. You've built up too much karmic momentum, which means you've got too identified with the world. You have too many desires, too many attachments, too many addictions, too many fears. This is what can happen. And then a being finds that their whole energy wants to get sucked back in and pulled back into the world, to finish something that they think they have to finish, to do something they think that they have to do or want to do, desire to do. This is what then keeps the whole cycle going, and this is what all the religions have been talking about for thousands of years in different ways. The Buddhists talk about samsara, the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, this kind of wheel, reincarnation wheel. The Jains talk about it. The Hindus talk about it. Even Christianity is talking about these things when it comes to salvation, to be saved. They're speaking about it in different ways. The Gnostics talked about this. In Zoroastrianism, these things are talked about. So all the religions have been speaking about this in different ways, using different words, different symbols, metaphors, which tells you something. If they've all been speaking about this, it tells you that there is truth to it. And when you understand the nature of life and yourself, you can see there is truth to it. Because again, as you know yourself, you know another. As you know yourself, you know life, you know the universe. As within, so without. As below, so above. As above, so below. You can come to know this for yourself by looking at life clearly, putting life under a microscope. And then you see it as it is, you see? So there are these levels, and you have the human level, which is, again, these systems, what people often refer to as the matrix system. There have been many different kinds of matrix systems throughout history, whether it was the Roman Empire or the Egyptians or the British Empire. All these different kinds of matrix systems. Now the Anglo-American Empire. But now we're moving to a new phase, which is the tech phase. And this is potentially one of the deepest up to this point where beings could really get trapped in that level where they completely forget and overlook their true source nature. You have artificial intelligence. You have the possibility of what is coming of putting chips in the brain. You have mixed augmented reality where they're trying to now mix what we call this life with the virtual world, like an overlay on top of it. Then you have the metaverse itself and these virtual worlds themselves where you will go in and put a headset on, or it will all be done from a chip in the brain, in which your whole senses, the 5 senses, are all hooked up to that simulation, where you will have a simulated body that is as real as this. And the only way that you will know the difference between that virtual world and this life is because of your memory, or the ability to see that you are the consciousness that is aware of the virtual world and not the virtual world itself. Just like you are the consciousness that is aware of this life and this body and is not this life and this body. And you see what is happening here? It's like a dream within a dream. The deeper you go into the dream, the harder it is to wake up from the dream. The easier it is to forget yourself, to overlook yourself, you see? And then there is, of course, unhappiness, suffering, unconsciousness. And then it is a trap. One gets trapped in that cycle, lost in the mind, lost identified with the world of forms, or in this case, lost in a virtual world, lost in the virtual world. Much more difficult to break free from. And this is where things are heading towards, and many beings will go for it. Make no mistake about it, many beings will go for this. They will go for the technology because it's being sold to them as you will become superhuman, when in reality, you'll become subhuman. I am not saying there is not any benefit to the technology. I truly feel there is. But it cannot benefit a being that is unconscious, that is asleep to themselves. It will only truly benefit a being who is awake to themselves, that has self-realized, that is conscious. Because only a being that is conscious and self-realized will not get lost in that world. You could get them to put a headset on or have a chip in the brain, and they will still have their attention on the source of what they are, as that consciousness. But a being that is not aware of who they are, they've now just created another layer of the illusion, of the trap, you see. So the way out of this, the way out of these layers and levels that can go on deepening, and the way out of the control of beings that are controlling these certain levels. There are beings that are benefiting and controlling, like frequency gatekeepers, controllers of these different levels. There's somebody that is benefiting and governing that technology level. There is somebody that is benefiting in the human matrix system levels. There are beings that are benefiting in the non-human levels. And it goes on, you see. And the work of each being, and this is really the bottom line for a being to be free, the work of each being is not to fight against these levels. That's a mistake, because what you fight, you become. What you fight, you become. And you will never get rid, because it is built into the fabric of life itself, this universe, the original universe of form. To have more different experiences, it has had to create these different levels and beings that are playing different roles. Some beings are there to play these roles, to create different kinds of experiences. If you try to fight against them and eradicate them, you will ultimately not succeed. You will just waste energy. That's not the way. The way is not to fight, not to resist them. The way is to be conscious, to self-realize, to find your freedom while you are here, and to be streetwise enough not to get caught in any of these levels, in any of these traps. They are all traps. They are all different traps that you can get caught in. Cul-de-sacs, loops, like being stuck in Groundhog Day. Your work, if you wish to be free and happy and joyful while you are playing out that particular form, is to realize who and what you essentially are, to have your attention towards that. And then and only then, through that and being streetwise, can you begin to enjoy, to actually enjoy. Yes, it is possible. It is possible to actually enjoy. You can only enjoy when you know you're not getting something from it, and when you know there's nothing to lose. If you think there is something to gain in these things, then you have desire after desire, restless desire, always dissatisfied. You'll always be striving for the next thing in an illusory future, thinking one day it will give you something. That's a trap. And then you will also have fear of losing that thing that you have gained or think you have gained. Recognize you never gain or lose anything in this world of form or in any of these levels. Realize that what you are is already eternal and complete and full and whole. And when you come from that place, then life can become a joy, because there's nothing to lose. There's no pressure. There's nothing to win. There's no pressure. And so you relax and you rest and you enjoy. And you feel assured that you are forever free. Because what you are is outside of these worlds, so to speak. You are in the world, but you are not of the world. This is your true nature, and this is how a being is liberated from the soul trap. Remember that, as Meister Eckhart, the mystic, said, he said, and I am paraphrasing, that if you are clinging and holding on to life, then you will see everywhere demons and devils that seem to be tearing your life away. But if you don't hold on, if you come to recognize what you are, then you will see that what appears to be devils and demons are actually angels that are freeing you from the earth. Enjoy the ride.